Hi, everybody. It's episode 3 of the In Ring Wrestling Podcast. I'm Kevin Kelly, your host, along with Casey Thompson. And together we're going to kind of weave our way through multiple stories that we were either singularly involved in or both of us were there. But all of it revolves around the theme of the special parts of wrestling that aren't usually featured. And those are a lot of the enhancement guys and the people behind the scenes who make the production go, who make wrestling so great. And Casey Thompson and I were both the big part of that, both in WWF and in WCW. And Casey's part. Casey, how are you today?
I'm doing good, but you're right, absolutely right. I always say everyone wants to know what they can't see and what they don't hear about. When you watch Howard Stern, he'd always talk about stuff that's going on behind the scenes. And like, oh, no one wants to hear about that. But that's what actually everyone wants to hear when you go to a concert. What do you want? You want a full access pass because you want to see what no one else can see, what's behind the curtain, behind the stage. So in the In Ring Wrestling Podcast, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get all the behind the scenes stuff that you've always wondered about.
Yeah, like last week, for example, we talked about our points of view because we were watching the same event at the same time. And it was in July of 1996, and it was Bash at the Beach, and it was Hulk Hogan, the big turn. Casey, of course, was there. And then for all
Hmm.
the Nitro tapings afterward that took place down in Florida at the MGM studios, I had just started with WWF, and I'm up in the studio in Stamford actually watching the pay per view from the TV studio in Stamford going, ooh, this is not going to be good for business. And it wasn't. And it led to, as Casey, reminded us, 83 weeks of ratings victories for Nitro over Raw. It caused the big changes in Raw, which we'll get to later on when we look at 1997
Right.
and how the ship for the WWF slowly turned and eventually took over. But Casey, of course,
They did create
has
some huge
wrestled.
stars, though.
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, it. I guess we could
Yeah.
ask: was it good for the business or was it bad for the business? And I think it was good for the business. I think it blew the money situation up.
I don't think you would have The Rock, Stone Cold, um, D-Generation X, groups like that would never got to the stardom they would have got if it wasn't
Would
for the
Vin-
Monday Night Wars.
well, yeah. Would Vince had ever gotten away from Doink the Clown and Duke the Dumpster Drosy? Cartoony characters,
Oh.
silly stuff that he liked, as opposed to the edgy stuff that that 18 to 34 demographic loved. I think that's the big question.
Right. No, you're absolutely
Okay,
right. I
so
think it made
let's
a big
take.
difference.
It had to have, and again, we could talk about the guaranteed money, which was another aspect of the Monday Night Wars, because really, for the first time in the United
Mm.
States, you had two companies that were bidding for the services of the other, and the majority of the time, there had been a handshake and a notice or a contract with some non-specific financial sort of not guarantees, but you could expect to make between here and here. And Brian
In,
Pillman,
in
from what I
1996,
know, go ahead. What, Casey?
no, I mean, I was just saying in 1996, they still all had downside guarantees, right?
I don't know if it
Because a
was
lot of those
phrased
guys,
that
their
way,
contracts,
but yeah, I
well,
think that
we
it
know it is
was
downside guarantees.
right. And I don't know if that's what they said to the boys. I don't know if they said, but you can expect to make at least this, but you'll make more with pay per view bonuses and the such. They did. Um, but again, there was the dangling carrot of WCW offering guaranteed money. You're going to come in and you're going to
Oh,
make
yeah.
X. With none of this, you might make this, and if business is good, you'll make more. You're going to get X. And boy, did that change things. And we could get into how it
And
changed
half
it.
the workload.
Well, yeah, because then the boys quickly figured out if I don't have to show up and I still get paid, you know, shoulders
Oh, yeah,
barking.
the injuries came out like crazy.
Yeah, of course.
I
Of
mean,
course.
up until that point, you worked hurt. No matter what happened, you worked hurt because you're replaceable. and they would just they would just send you home. You're not getting paid. But now it's all was starting to become guaranteed stuff. I seen more guys cash in their Lloyd's of London stuff. Rick Rude, guys that have been hurt that forever that were getting paid for years just sitting at home.
Yeah. I mean, we could do episodes. And that's one of the great things about this in-ring wrestling podcast is Casey and I don't sit here and script all this out. We kind of talk as we go along, and our production meeting lasted about 30 seconds. Like, yeah, I'm going to ask you some questions. But as the conversation goes, we're I'm thinking like, oh, that's a topic for another day. Like, for example, how all the Minnesota guys got these Lloyd's of London contract. And, because Perfect had one, Joe Laurinaitis had one, and Rick Rude had one. So I want to do some more investigating on that.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, when we start to talk about the change in guaranteed money, you mentioned the name Brian Pillman, because Brian Pillman, from what I understand, was one of the first to get guaranteed money. And I think that was all in that competitive junction between WWF and WCW when they were bidding for each other's services. He probably was the first to get guaranteed money from the WWF. Let's put it that way, because they signed him when he was still hurt.
Right. Correct.
So, and from there, we'll talk about the Mark Marrow situation, because I was there for that when Mark Marrow came in with Sable and magically got more guaranteed money than The Undertaker. Mark Marrow. I kid you not. So,
Wow.
speaking of guaranteed money, there are a few things.
Sable?
Yes. There are a few things in life that are guaranteed, of course, and we know that death, taxes, and camera equipment costs money. Those three things are guaranteed in life. And in episode 1 of the In-Ring Wrestling Podcast, Casey Thompson, who wrestled approximately how many matches in WCW? Give me an estimate, a ballpark. How many times did you wrestle for climb into a WCW ring to wrestle on television?
I don't know exactly, but it has to be in the hundreds.
Okay.
At least.
Like 200?
Couple hundred?
Yeah.
3? I don't know. Yeah. We can say that.
Yeah. So approximately 200 matches. Casey Thompson climbs into a WCW ring. That's, of course, not all. He was in the did enhancement work for WWF. He was working, a full schedule of matches down in Florida as well, traveling around the Sunshine State, points beyond, international tours, international dates, etc. But we're just focusing on his WCW time because, it is television. Not every event that Casey Thompson wrestled in was televised and would have television cameras. But these WCW tapings seem to always have these problematic cameramen around ringside, getting in the way, being up close and personal, getting those shots from standing above on the corner of the ring, looking down. And Casey Thompson decided one day to go into business for himself. I'm embellishing this story, Casey. I'm going to make it.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
It was a vigilante hit. All right. Casey Thompson was lucky.
I was thinking, you know what? I'm tired. All the boys want to have the rest of the afternoon off. Let me just go break all the cameras for we can have the day off,
Oh, my God. All right. So set the stage and tell me how Casey Thompson broke over $100,000 worth of camera equipment in one enhancement match. Who were you wrestling? What was the scene? Take us there.
I was wrestling. Me and my partner was actually my real life tag team partner, Cliff Anderson. His real name, Cliff Sheets. We wrestled in a tag team called the Exterminators. We were wrestling Rough and Ready, which was Mike Enos, and which is one of the Beverly Brothers from WWF back in the day, and Dick Slater, which everyone knows Dickie. He's a legend and badass. Everything. So we're talking before. Mike always did like a reverse slam, and I said, Mike, why don't you do it off the top rope? Let's make it look good. I'll take the bumps for you. I was cool with him. He was always a really nice guy. And he's like, I said, I'll make myself light enough. Just go up, set me up there, climb up, and I'll post and do the reverse slam. He's like, "You
So
sure?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." And then
like a
Dickie come up to
razor's
me because we
edge,
worked.
or not the razor's edge, the sack of shit bump.
Yes,
Okay,
exactly.
okay. The sack of shit, as they called it.
Yeah, exactly.
Throw them right
So,
over.
and then Dickie came up to me and was like, "Hey, you want to take that bump that you take?" Because I worked Dickie a bunch on Independence and through Florida, different places like that, where basically he would shoot me into the corner, and I'd go face first. I'd do almost as all at the same time. I would do a handstand and do a couple flips over and land on the floor.
Good God.
Which I seen the Great Muta do it many years ago, and I think he fucked up. So I was like, "Oh, if Muta can do it, I can do it," because I was young and dumb. Don't get me wrong, I pay for it every day. I pay for it every day when I get out of bed now. But I went ahead and did it, and I did it multiple times, did it with pads out there, no pads. So we get in there, we're wrestling, everything's going fine, and Mike puts me up on the corner, and the camera guys, a good producer is going to shoot everything really tight, especially if they have not a bit. So I think we're at Disney. We're actually at Disney then. So you figure there's about 500 to 700 people in the audience. They built the thing, the seating, elevated seating, the stadium seating would go straight up, and they shoot everything really tight, so it makes it look like a bigger crowd than it is. So what happened is he puts me up there, and the cameraman's right up on it. And when we do the reverse slam, he goes to throw me. My foot kicks it, and it puts the camera. And the camera just goes across. I don't know where the camera went. I didn't see it. And
So it left
so we continue
the
wrestling
cameraman's
back.
so it went off the cameraman's shoulder. He's standing on the
Oh yeah,
edge of the ring.
It was gone.
So you took the sack of shit and the camera
Like,
took the sack of shit all at the same time.
he was on the ring apron. He is on the ring apron, and my foot kicked it right off his shoulder, and it broke the lens and everything. So because they're shooting everything tight.
Of course. Now
So
I can tell you. Now I can tell you this. This is not a WCW. Hang on a second. Now I can tell everybody this. This is not a WCW rule. This is not. This is an every wrestling show rule, from the biggest to the smallest. If they've got cameras at ringside, you'll hear somebody tell somebody, "Don't break the camera because it cost X." Don't throw the microphone because it costs $500.
Yeah.
Bob Keller. And don't kick the camera. Don't do anything to the camera because it costs at least a couple of $1,000s. And then when you're up in, big time television, you're talking multiples of tens of thousands of dollars. So Casey Thompson has just taken the sack of shit bump from Mike Enos out of the corner, and at the same time has kicked $250,000 over the shoulder of the cameraman. At least that's if it's just a lens. It could be a whole $100,000 if both the lens and the camera are kaput. Way to go. Yeah. Way to go, Casey.
So then,
but wait, there's more.
So then
there's more damage.
There with Dickie. Yeah, there's more. So I'm in the corner of Dickie, and Dickie's like, "Hey, you ready to take that bump? Your bump?" I'm like, "Yep." Shoots me into the corner. I do the handstand, and you can actually see this on the footage. I do the flip, and Jackie Crockett's right there, and I land on top of Jackie, and you can see the collision happen on TV. They didn't edit that out. So
why?
I get back in the ring, boom, match is over. Yeah, so I landed on top of Dickie. I'm on top of Jackie Crockett. So we get after the match is over in the IBF, the referee says, "Hey, go to the booking office," and I'm thinking, "Oh, cool." I'm like, finally, I might get some recognition for some of the bumps, hard work and this and that. This is what's going through my head. Okay, you know what? Maybe then I say, you know what? We're going to offer this kid a deal finally because, he's always coming out here, always making all of our eyes look good. This is all going through my head.
Yeah, but wait a second. You have okay. So what? When you landed on Jackie Crockett, what did you say to him? What did he say to you?
I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Honestly, I didn't know I broke any cameras until I got into
Right.
the booking office.
But wait a minute. Wait a
I
minute.
had
What
no
did
clue.
when
I
you
didn't feel.
when
I
you
didn't feel my
landed?
foot kick the first one.
Right. But when you landed on Jackie Crockett, did you say, "Oh shit, sorry"?
Nothing. No, I think someone was there to throw me back into the ring. So there
Okay.
wasn't much time, but it was there was no exchange ever made.
Okay.
Jackie was a great guy. So Jackie was cool with whatever, you know. So
He was one of the boys. He got it. He got it
all
on
this
every level.
he he definitely was one of the boys. So I'm in the ring. All these thoughts are going through my head in that like waiting for them to do their exit and then we could leave the ring selling and we're leaving the ring. So I go to the booking office. As I'm getting into the booking office, Slater and Enos are sliding out behind me. And Enos looked at me and says, "Hey man, I'll see you at the bar tonight. All the drinks are on me." And I'm like, "I ain't getting a contract. Something's something's definitely not right here."
Something is
So
amiss.
in in the booking office was the whole entire booking committee for WCW, the executives, Eric Bischoff. Now, for a young wrestler trying to make a deal, you know, trying to get a deal eventually, to have everyone at one time, he had Eric Bischoff, Kevin Sullivan, which was the head booker, Paul Orndorff, his assistant, Terry Taylor, his assistant, Mike Graham, his other assistant, Hulk Hogan, and
What?
Arn Anderson was doing. Hogan was in there too, and Arn Anderson was doing the talking. And he's like, "Casey, oh, I'm sorry, Flair was in there too." So I had the
What?
whole trifecta of WCW, uh, who's of who that can make any decision. Literally,
Casey?
this is
What?
everyone was in there.
Welcome
So
to the family. Great big hug. No? No, that didn't happen.
yeah, I didn't get a hug. So Arn was like, "Casey, we really appreciate all the hard work you always do for us." I'm like, "Okay." He says, and you know, there's always a but, and he says, "But we can't have you breaking two $60,000 cameras in one match." And I was just
Damn.
like, "Well, I didn't do it on purpose." He's like, "We know you didn't do it on purpose." I said, "I was just trying to just do my job and just put you guys over and make your boys look good." He's like, "I know." He says, "And that's why you're here all the time is because we can always trust in you to always make everyone always look good." He says, "But,
But
you know, it's cheaper." There's a lot of buts in this conversation, but it's cheaper if you mess up the spot and we can fix it in post. So basically what he's meaning there is, say someone goes in to say shoot someone off, duck to clothesline, I'll clothesline you. And he goes to duck the clothesline and he doesn't duck and he gets hit or they mess it up. What they do is they just redo the same move right then. And then in post, they will edit out the bad one and put the good one in. And you'll never know the difference.
yeah.
So he says
Or
it's
you get
cheaper
or you
to
get in
just do
my
it in post.
you get what I refer Julio De Niro, a few of the boys we referred to as the double duck and look, where both guys think they're supposed to duck and both duck and nothing happens and they both look back at the other. The double duck and look. One of my favorites.
Yeah.
Cheaper to fix the
Yeah.
double
Then you have to
duck and
stiff
look.
someone to,
Yeah. Cheaper to fix the he slipped off of the arm drag. He didn't take this right. Uh the punch had a lot of air in it. It's easier to fix that than to fix two $60,000 cameras. Casey Thompson just
Then he
myrtleized.
said, actually, you can hurt yourself. You can get hurt in that ring trying to keep from breaking that camera, and it's cheaper to fix you
Oh my God.
than it is to replace those cameras. Now that's going to lead into another whole episode about how the office takes care of the enhancement guys,
Yeah.
extras, jobbers, whatever you want to call it, wrestlers.
I think that
okay, so
that
that's going to
will
lead
set
into a
the
lot because
stage.
as a
Yeah.
side note, yes, as a side note, I was watching one of Stevie Richards' podcasts, and he was talking about Yokozuna, how he would take care of the over guys, but the enhancement guys he would kill with his finish move, where he did that big
The
old whatever it
bonsai.
was off the second rope. Yeah. So that's another whole thing we'll talk about. So he literally said that to me. It's cheaper to fix your body than it is to replace two $60,000 cameras in one match.
Right.
I said, all right, I apologize. I said, but I do have a question. We're like, all right. I said, am I still going to get paid for today? And they're like, yeah, you're going to get your pay. Don't worry. I said, all right. Is there anything else? Contract? Anything? Nothing? No, that's it. So I was kind of down in the dumps. I was a little depressed. I was kind of like, this sucks. And so I seen Enos and I seen him at the bar buying up a pizza at night. And he said, oh, let me buy you a drink. I'm sorry, man. Oh, I'm like, oh, it's all good, bro. I said, I don't drink, though. He's like, oh, ever since that day, I never paid for a hotel room because I always roomed with Mike Enos and Jerry Lynn. I was just known to I stayed in their room.
Beautiful.
Mike always took care. Michael was always out half the night anyhow, which there's a million Mike Enos stories. I have a great one about a rent-a-car. I would always
I can't wait.
sleep in his bed. I was in the business longer than him, even though he was the mid-card over guy.
Yeah.
So he you take the bed out of, he had showed respect. You take the bed, I'll sleep on the floor. I'm like, no, I'll
Really?
just, half the night he wasn't there. So
Well, yeah, but still.
yeah, he was, yeah, he told me some really cool stories about how, they would be all messed up and Savage would come in and they would be flipping pennies on the ground and Savage would always pick him up. Macho Man would always pick him up because his dad always tell him, to always, if you see a coin on the floor in the ground, pick it up. And, because they're really tight with their money. They go into the Savages, the Paphos would go into restaurants and wait till people are done eating and eat their food. So there's a lot of stories that could come from this. Anyhow, back to the breaking the two cameras. And
hang on.
I was down.
Wait,
the next
Casey,
day I was kind of moping.
Time out. I got two questions. So Arn did all the talking in the meeting. Okay. Were you alone, or did Cliff go with you?
Yes.
Okay.
No, I was by myself.
Yeah. He was in the locker. He was taking his tape off going, oh, well, Casey's fired. I'm good, though.
In the ring, in the IBF, the IBF in the ring, the referee with the IBF said, Casey, go to the booking office. He didn't say Casey and Cliff. So Cliff is like, woo, I'm out of here. So
was anybody
the next day?
Okay, now TV. Wait a minute. Question number 2. Hogan, Flair,
okay.
Bischoff. Were those guys paying attention to Arn talking to you, or were they having their own meeting?
There was nothing else going on in that room except for them talking to me.
All eyes were on you.
Everyone was on me. Nothing was going on. There's no monitors going. They weren't watching the next match because they would sit there watch the match. Nothing was going on except for me getting talked to for breaking two $60,000 cameras. $120,000 in one match.
One match. Now, did you talk to Jackie Crockett or the other cameraman the next day?
I don't even know who the first cameraman was.
You killed him.
A lot of times, WCW would sub out the work to Disney guys.
Right.
And Jackie would be a couple of guys, and they would sub out the work. So I didn't know who all the no, honestly, I never had a conversation with Jackie about it again. Not for I don't know why. I wish I would have. So the next day, I'm walking through the hallway, and I see Kevin Sullivan, which realized I've known Kevin Sullivan since I was 15 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So we discussed that. He was one of my mentors. I knew him very, very well. So he looked at me and says, "What's up, baby?" He says, "How many cameras?" In his Boston accent. "How many
How many
cameras are going to break
cameras?
today?" And I was like,
Yeah.
"All right, I'm feeling a little bit better." And then Orndorff pulled me to the side. Paul Orndorff. If anyone doesn't know who Paul Orndorff is, he's a very intense individual. Um, After every one of my matches, he would pull me to the side and like rip me a new ass. I'm the enhancement guy, and I was like, "What?" Which you ever seen that at WWE where one of the agents would talk to the enhancement guy after the match
Only for doing stuff they weren't
on a
supposed to
regular
do.
basis? Have you ever
Only
seen
for
that when
doing
you're doing TV?
not.
Right, but have you ever
They
seen it
did,
where he would? Right.
coach, a little bit. They loved. I know they loved Scoot Andrews, another Florida guy, and there was some work, definite agenting
Yeah.
in their matches with Scoot because they really liked him. But it's very rare. Most of the time, it's going to be, "Hey, what's your name, Tony Garea? What's your name? Why did you do that? It was the shits. Don't ever do it again." So
He
he
gave me
didn't even
my
know if.
WWE name, by the way, Tony Garea.
Oh, okay. Well, that's another story. I'll tell you how Tony Garea comes up with
Yeah.
names.
So
There's a method.
so yeah yeah. So
Now Orndorff
Orndorff's
is
very
yelling at
intense.
you.
He'd talk to me after. Orndorff would get on me at every single after every match. "Don't do this, do this, do that, do that," and I was like, I don't want to curse every time you tune the kicks. I was like, fuck, I'm
Mm-hmm.
getting yelled at every match. Like, what? Am I the shits? And actually, Enos was also the one watching. He's like, "Bro, listen, if he didn't like you, he wouldn't be talking to you after every match. Just listen to him." So I'm
Right.
like, okay. So I was walking down the hallway after I seen Kevin. Kevin's like, asked me how many cameras I'm going to break today. And then I see Orndorff. He looked at me. He says, "If those fucking camera guys are in your way again, break those fucking cameras. I hate fucking cameramen." And then I was like, you know what? I'm good. I'm
This
like,
is
I'm not
Paul
worried
Orn.
about it.
Right.
So
And
he,
Paul Orndorff, fellow Floridian, Tampa guy, grew up
mhm,
tough, college athlete, worked for Watts, worked for everybody, became had his big run, had some neck issues, caused weakness in his right arm, and had to step away from the ring, transition into being an
yeah.
agent, and notoriously, infamously, famously beat up Vader in Vader's prime while Paul Orndorff, crippled man
Oh
with
yeah.
one arm, wearing flip flops. We'll probably talk about that in another episode. That's how
And
tough Paul Orndorff was.
yes, because 2 weeks, yes, because 2 weeks prior to that, I got into it with Vader backstage after a match, and
So
we'll
we
get
will
into that.
talk next
I went
week.
from, I went from, I went from being on the board, Hulk Hogan versus Casey Thompson, to being off to wrestling Vader. So that's another story. Yeah.
PU. All right, so
Yeah.
let's
I
set
got
the
my
stage
luck.
for what we're going to talk
Yeah.
about next week. Speaking of PU, we'll talk about Vader and how bad he smelled. We'll talk about other jerks in the WCW
Hmm.
locker room. We highlighted some guys that Casey liked today, including Mike Enos, Paul Orndorff, Kevin Sullivan, even Arn Anderson. He bonded. You heard the story about how he bonded with Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan, Eric Bischoff, the triumvirate, the three of them, along with Bischoff. That really didn't happen, but that's how I'll remember this story, by God. And Casey, of course, wiping out almost $150,000 in camera equipment. Here's what we want you to do, folks. This show lasts 30 minutes each and every week. We want you to download, listen, like, share, subscribe. And We want you to tell everybody you know, not just 3 friends. We want you to tell every single person that you know on God's green earth and beyond. So that's going to do it. Casey, it's been another wild ride. Let's do it again next week. And for Casey Thompson, I'm Kevin Kelly. We'll see you next week on the In Ring Wrestling Podcast.